Well, good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure for me to join you in this event this morning, and I wish you have a very productive session throughout the day. Let me start with the good news, which has been an increasingly encouraging background for those of us working on African economic development, and I'm sure will be repeated during the event today, which is that in the past 2 decades, Africa has transformed from being labeled the lost continent into one of the few havens of growth. For 10 years now, per capita growth in Africa has been averaging from 2.3% to 5%, a growth that is envied by all. Now, a number of factors have contributed to that growth, which are well established, although it is hard, of course, to attribute percentages to each item or to generalize over the whole continent. Africa has been reaping the dividends of peace and democracy. In the late 90s and 2000s, there were a third fewer wars in Africa compared to previous decades. Public confidence on longer-term stability is leading to higher domestic savings, and macroeconomic stability has been cemented by more genuine government commitment to reform. In addition, over the last decade, Africa has benefited from a commodities boom, which led to significant export growth, but so far has had little impact on unemployment and poverty. Debt forgiveness, which has created headroom, and new South-South investments and trade partnerships with countries like China and India, which have opened new opportunities. Less airtime, however, has been given to other significant drivers. The rise in a new generation of African businesses, from banks, EcoBank, for example, present in 33 African countries, to mobile phone companies like MTN or Safaricom, and so many more both multinational and national indigenous strong African companies. A reform drive among many of the countries on the continent, reducing the obstacles to business, and a much more improved dialogue between government and business in many countries, laying the foundation for healthy, transparent dialogue regarding economic policies and investments to foster growth. We at the World Bank Group have recorded through the Doing Business report process a strong wind of investment climate reforms in Africa. In recent years, Doing Business has reported that sub-Saharan Africa reforming economies account for almost 1/2 of the world's top reformers. So in short, Africa has made good use of the windfalls and improved environment to undertake some of the reform work needed to serve as a foundation for future economic growth. Many commentators say that some African countries look like Asian countries looked in the run-up to their takeoff. Now, against this exciting litany of achievements, however, we have to realize that these challenges, significant as they are only the foundation for future growth. They are not nearly enough to eradicate poverty and to bring shared prosperity to the continent. While the foundations of African growth appear to be strengthening, there is as yet no evidence that structural change towards industrialization is happening in Africa. And this is needed because without a minimum of industrialization, no country can achieve high income status. Transition of agriculture is leading to a push to the informal sectors in urban settings. Exports are still resource dependent, and manufacturing has not yet begun to create the job base as seen in East Asia or Western Europe. Now, to achieve such a transformation from an economy dominated by mining and oil, subsistence agriculture, and informal trading, we need to transform our economies, and this will require a redoubling of efforts to reform. At present, the growth we are seeing is constrained by high factor costs, for example, electricity, and frequently even net labor costs, insufficient infrastructural investments, a perception of a lack of political determination to support economic growth, whatever it takes, and persistent corruption in some areas. In short, many fundamentals are still lacking. The business climate in many African countries is still weak. The dialogue and consultation between the private and public sector in some places is still difficult, and there is a need for more skills in the private sector. More infrastructural investments are needed as well, and access to finance is still difficult and requires a smarter, more effective model. Now, while it might be tempting for Africa to try to skip manufacturing straight to a service economy, Evidence from countries such as China or India shows the importance of developing a deep and broad industrial base. So, aware of the huge progress made to date and the determination of so many leaders on the continent to do what it takes, I really look forward to hearing the view of so many leaders speaking today as we look together at some of the challenges that I have highlighted. In my capacity as Senior Director of the Global Practice on Trade and Competitiveness, I will be most interested in hearing how we can build competitiveness strategies by bundling interventions, how simultaneous efforts on business environment regulations, building infrastructure, improving access to finance, promoting innovation can allow firms to improve productivity, to generate new investments, to connect to global value chains, and to increase market shares in goods and services. We need to build now on the foundations to date and seize opportunities. Events like the Ebola crisis shows us the need to move further and faster to build stronger and more resilient economies and societies. Thank you very much.
doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.